depends, our life will never end. What a great line that is. I mean, isn't that the ultimate love? This world on you depends. Our life will never end. Gotta love your man. Good, you gotta love your man.
How are you, folks?
Keyboard solo.
Enzo Di Costanzo, and today we're going to be working on the third Excel video for stock valuation. So let's get to it. A little Doors background music, right? The holiday season. I don't know if you guys can hear it over the you probably can over the microphone. That's Ray Manzarek, the late Ray Manzarek, the keyboardist for the Doors, who passed away probably about 10 years ago. The Doors were a Southern California rock and roll band in the 60s, and they only put out 6 records because the singer passed away. The singer passed away the year I was born, funny enough. And they the January, I was born in December, the January of 71, right after I was born, the Doors with the Garden, or the Forum in New York in January, and played multiple dates, multiple shows. It's nice, right? I don't think they played this in concert though, because I think this was on the last record. I think he passed away. So before they could tour with it.
Thunder, bring in the thunder.
That's Ray,
Kicks it in again.
The late Ray Manzarek. So anyhow, yeah, let's hit this. And what we got to hit today. So we stopped here at non-constant growth. And I was as we were prepping for the video today, I looked at some of the Home Depot numbers. See, this set of notes, I made this about 4 years ago, these notes. And it was whatever, 17, 18 or something. So we projected forward, and it's nice to be able to compare with you guys what I was thinking. And everything happens for a reason, right? What I was thinking in the fall of 2018 versus what the actual performance of dividends and earnings were for Home Depot. So we'll get to check that today. So non-constant growth it sets a horizon for a future year that one expects a company growth to be steady to the horizon year of H, whatever that horizon year is. So are you going to own a now? Again, the valuation I'm working on right now, I have a 25-year time horizon, but I'm operating like it's a 5-year time horizon, just knowing the people that I'm working for. But again, that's experience, and I'm at the real side. I feel like maybe I'm always at the sweet spot of what I'm doing, but I feel like I'm at the real sweet spot in the sense where I have enough years that I've done this and enough years ahead of me where to make it worth it to still keep working on this, kind of thinking. And that's where I am. And Buffett had more than half of his career ahead of him, sort of where I am. So hopefully, and I don't have a McDonald's breakfast sandwich every day like he does in a cherry Coke. I do not do that once in a while, and I'll be cutting that back. But I remember reading his biography. He has the whatever the McDonald's is in. See, let me tell you what Warren Buffett is doing. Warren Buffett is going to work in the retail business in a sense. He's living and operating like he's still a teenager, which is fine. And I understand what he's trying to keep himself grounded no matter how wealthy he is, because he figures who and what he is came from that teenager, that young person in their 20s who wanted to succeed in this and wanted to succeed in at Columbia Business School and in capital management and building a life. And he never wanted to lose that. Like, I hate to say it, but I think probably like so many people who do become very wealthy lose who and what they are and are just so, wildly financially successful that they don't have to look back and say, hey, am I still the same person I was at 15? And it's when I say the same person, the same values, the same kind of a family person that, in maybe the best years of your life. Am I still that in my 50s, in my 60s, in my 40s, or whatever it might be? And I think the answer to that question to a lot of people might be a scary negative. It may not be. They may not be the same person any longer. Their bank accounts have dramatically changed them. That's what Warren Buffett's trying to do, living in the same house he lived in when was 30 years old or whatever it was, whenever he moved back to Nebraska. That's what he's trying to do. And I think there's a lesson in that for all of us. The valuation formula is, again, dividends or cash flows divided by 1 plus the discount rate. And then obviously you extend that by the number of years, you extend that by the horizon. Okay, you extend that by all of that. And that's a nice mathematical, P0 means value today, dividend 1 means the cash flow a year from now, those kinds of things. Now, in mid 2017, it says the price of Home Depot stock was about $148 a share. The company earned about $7 a share and paid out about 50% of earnings as dividends. And let's see how we might use this dividend discount model to estimate the intrinsic value. Now, here, and I'll tell you, there's work to be done on this. I'm giving you sort of an overview, sort of in the last class or two that we have in the full 2022 semester, an overview of what this is. But this needs to be reworked in terms of expanding the Home Depot footprint, and I think the lectures and the videos should focus on reading the 10K and the stock price for the last 15 years or something to that effect. I think that's what we really need to focus on with this. And the good thing about the Home Depot annual report is it does lend itself to a lot of the Brearley-Myers analysis. It does lend itself to that stuff very well. So let's see. This is the income statement, and the earnings for 21 and 20 are 15, 12, 10, and we'll get to that. Yeah, we want to look at the stock price. So let's do that. So. All right, they're up to $320 a share, which is pretty good. Let's see the 5-year. Oops, we don't want this. Let's see the 5-year, what the 5-year numbers look like here. Yeah, we have to go back a bit more. Yeah, the maximum data they have goes back to 85 sometime. But let's see what we could do here. Yeah, there's 153 as I'm just and it's an active graph, so you can just sort of hover over it as you wish. You can hover over it as you wish. So yeah, there we go. All right, so that was about that. But you can see it dramatically appreciated. Really, you would have now at the time, post Great Recession, these were all good buys. It was $30 a share. You'd have 10 times if all you did was bought Home Depot, put all your money in Home Depot, you would have had 10 times your money, equity wise, 10 times, and you could have probably done that with a lot of stocks. And that's an amazing lesson to learn for, that's an amazing lesson to learn for your careers in capital management. So yeah, so $140 a share, and then the company earned seven. Now, and again, we would need the 20 whatever this is, the one that came out in 2018, that 10K to really check that. This came out. How do these guys do it? Their year ends. Yeah, the retail, they like to get that return. They like to get the activity in January. They want to end their year in January instead of December to really capture the holiday traffic. There during the Sunday football games, there were commercials where there was a drill wrapped up. I don't look at tools as a present, but some people look at it as sort of a hobby. I think the guys doing it all the time may not look at it that way, but you know, the hobbyists out there or the groupies, right? The hardware store groupies can look at things like that. But like I said, you have to go back and check that number. Um, and I think now it's $10 or $12 a share, something to that effect. Well, let's check that. Yeah, the basic earnings will do about 11, 12, 10, 10, 12, $15. So it's about double that. Yeah, it's about double that. Do we have EPS? Yeah, 17. The trail 12 months is 17. And what do we have here? 15. Okay. So yeah, so the numbers are somewhat adding up to how we saw it a couple years ago. And it says now, sure, you can model every line. You can do that, and there's nothing wrong with that. But you're also to go to take a 2 weeks to model a company out, uh, and then you're not even going to pursue it or acquire it or take it seriously. Beyond that is not that there's anything wrong with that. It's a good exercise, but uh, your first pass through in terms of evaluation, you're going to say, hey, what are we forecasting for earnings? And you can just do a mathematical average of all your historical earnings. Now, 84 to today would be that's 40 years. Yeah, yeah, 94, 04, 14. Yeah. That because right, 20 so you'd have 40 years of annual reports to sort of go back and look. And you can, and believe me, Warren Buffett would do that. He would. Warren Buffett would eventually do that. Um, but yeah, that's when you have a team doing those, and then everybody's figuring everything out as you go along, and then what are the accounting changes? And believe me, you'd have dramatic changes in assumptions, and are the assumptions the same in 1994 as they were today? And you'd be facing a lot of that, so you got to be careful going that bananas, with that level of detail. But if you say, hey, our earnings are forecasting about 20% a year over the next 5 years, and the growth rate is higher than the discount rate or the return that investors require, which would be 10%. And so and it's implausible to suppose that such rapid, implausible means not really believable or not be really realistic, could continue indefinitely. Therefore, we cannot use a simple constant growth formula to value the shares. Instead, we break the problem up into a couple of different pieces. You have the rapid growth period, you have the stock price at the horizon, and then you calculate the present value of the stock by summing the present. So you sum the two pieces. So in other words, whatever your idea of selling the shares are, selling the company is, and again, you're making dramatic assumptions in these models. Big simplifications. These are big simplifications. But the dividends, again, I've said it to you guys before, just like a cash flow. So you would have the valuation and keep thinking of the graph where the cash flows had a pretty big impact over time, and the terminal. I'm sorry, which one was it? Man, what was that graphic? And we worked it out here with you guys. And this thing. What happened here? Yeah, the cash flows dominated, and the terminal price. You see this obviously, but many decades down the road, the blue had a bigger impact on the summation or the final valuation than the terminal price. But the terminal price was more influential early on. So that's something just to keep in mind. The cash was long term. This matters the most is what that was, folks. I apologize. I should went back to look at that. But and then you do the present value computation, and yeah, and really, if you're in now, again, we may do something where I'll grab all the 10Ks going back to the Great Recession or 2005 or six or something like that, and I think that's a good, or even back to 2000 or something, or the mid 90s or something. But then you start going that far back, you might as well just take it all, um, and you can start looking at data and just seeing the behavior of the company. All right, so what do we have here? So we were here with this. Okay, like I said, you use Yahoo Finance to find the stock price at whatever reference you're looking at. Here we got $148 a share. Okay, and I think looking at these, you had the payout percentage was 50%, and the retained earnings per share was obviously the other 50%. Okay, is what that was. And I think the EPS. So this was, and again, you have to identify, when is your reference point in time. My T0 was the middle of 2017, a good year, and we had earnings of $7.15 per share, right there, and book value per share was $1.21. And you might say, well, Professor, how did you get that? Well, we can do a fast check of that. Yeah, the equity number would be, yeah, see, they had negatives. I remember that. There was some because there was some big events that happened here. There were big stock buybacks. Yeah, sorry. I'm saying just at the tips of our fingers, it's not gonna lend itself to us doing this, but okay, because there were big. There were. I don't want to say there's some manipulation here, but there was some. Tell you this: there was some maneuvering here. So yeah, these weird negative equity numbers. That the book there is a negative, right? I do recall that. But like I said, you actually here. Let's see if what these guys have financials. Those are quarterly. Let's look at the annual. Okay, those are annual, and let's do balance sheet. Going back to 19. And see, the scary thing about this is we're just looking it up here instead of their stockholders' equity. Yeah, see, it's still negative for a couple years. And it's negative here. So they're doing something. They're doing some buybacks or something like that. Because it's still owned by the folks who they're doing something for taxes. I'm telling you that right now. So sorry, but here all right. Well, you would look that up and divide. You would divide by the shares that you could find. The number of shares outstanding. So whatever this number is, it says it's claiming there's 100,000. So there's claiming there's a billion shares out there. That's what they're saying. There's a billion shares out there. So you divide by a billion, right? This is 100,000, 100 million. So a billion, yeah. And you divide that number, the equity number, by that, and hopefully get $1.21. Sorry, but see again, when you're flying by the seat of your pants, sometimes it's not the greatest. So okay, and then you're also looking at growth of 20%. The first 5 years. Your discount rate is 10%, okay, which is there. And then you had some other things that you did. Yeah, what we did here, we did this thing. Yeah, we used return on equity of 14%. is what we did. Equal parenthesis 1 minus. Yeah, there's a lot of things in here. That's how you got the 7. So you did return. You did that the formula with the G in it. Where is it? We had it someplace. This right? R times a plowback. What was the plowback? The plowback was. Actually, this is the plowback. Times ROE gave you G. That's the formula, and we discussed that previously. Yeah, I should be using this thing. Oh no, wait, no, this is right. At the plowback. Yeah. I was right. You have to use you're using that particular 50. See, when they're both the same, you say, well, who cares? Well, you want to use that 50. So it's 1 minus this. It's always gonna be 1 minus that. So you always want to work that way. Okay. And let's put some of the years in. So what are we looking at? So this is 2017. Is there. And we're going to get to fill in the rest of this in a second. So all right. Horizon years 5 years. We figured out the 7%. So we're price per earnings. We're going to get this in a second. And now with the dividend, or at least that first dividend, you're going to say, okay, yeah, if your earnings are $7.15, you're going to take half of that. Okay, you'll do that. And this is going to be equal to this times. And you could have played some other games with this if you wish to. Okay, so the price per earnings is that divided by. All right, it's those two. Stock price divided by the earnings per share. And again, you always want to validate all these numbers back, just like we did with the macro work. You want to validate all these numbers back to the the documents. Back to where the data is sourced. You always want to be able to do that. So, but there you go. Like I said, so the book value per share. So again, folks, I apologize. I don't think they were doing the big buybacks half a decade ago, because they know the stock has gone as far as it could go. So people are probably cashing out, and there's all sorts of we'll say maneuvering happening from the big shareholders. Okay, so your dividend at the end of the first year is at $3.58. That's your dividend, right? And the earnings per share is a 7.15, and the book is this. So those are your three that you really need. Okay. And if companies don't have earnings, then you start, doing other things. You got to work with the data that's going to give you a logical result. Okay, so then you have all those. Let's see how dividends grow. With the dividends, we just keep using the 50 cent. So, yeah, actually, what grew or what we projected were earnings until the 6th year. So the first 5 years, they're growing at 20 across the board. This, right? The first 5 years, they're growing at 20 across the board. And this last year, these needed to grow a little more milder, 8.6. Okay. And this was simply that number times the 50%. And you could lock that row, could lock that column. That's just the whole way down. This is just half that earnings number. That's all that is. That's just half. That's just 50% times your earnings number. Okay. And like I said, I'm of the school that says don't just, now look, a first pass through, you're going to maybe take the bottom line number and do what we're doing now. But when you really look at the acquisition, you got to sit there and model this completely. What are the components? This is really good iced tea. I made this. That's why I'm saying that. I made lemonade the other night too. That was really good. And it is good. It's the quality of the ingredients. Quality. Let me tell you something, folks. Lemonade is 3 ingredients: water, sugar, and lemons. And it sounds simple to use. There's commercials where it's just some 5-year-old kids sitting there and they're selling it. They have the lemons floating in it, and that's just for. Let me tell you something. You leave lemons floating in lemonade, like the white part makes it very bitter. Never do that unless you're going to drink it right away. Never do that. That's for show. That's just simply for show, to make it, to remind people what it is. You never do that in a real lemonade. Is you want to get the lemons aren't soaking. I cut the yellow part off and let it soak, and then fish it out because it turns bitter if you leave it in there for too long. So just keep that in mind. But it's not simple. It's 3 ingredients, but it's 3 because the lemons are fussy. Lemons and tomatoes are some of the fussiest ingredients you could ever. If you don't have good quality lemons, tomatoes, mushrooms, you're doomed. Anyway, enough of the Emeril Lagasse cooking show. The next piece of the puzzle here is, how do we do this? Okay. Yeah. Good. No, I use the retained earnings equation here. So what you do is you reference the last book value. Your retained is right there. And then you're going to multiply by, because you're keeping half the earnings in there. See what happened here? How we did this? You had your book value plus half of your earnings of what, because you're going to plow back half of them, right, into the company. Okay. And then you just do that the whole way down. Okay. So then you have some idea of what, and you have a book value comparison, which again, I've been saying this to my guys a lot. So, and then you do present value of the dividends is what's next. And then you can check prices based on the PE. But this is nice. This is a nice little, it's a nice little it's a nice little sample of valuation here. So you're going to take the dividend divided by 1 plus whatever you think your rate should be, and then how many years. So you're a year out, so you're bringing it back to T0. This is just the present value of 429, 87. Whoops. $260 underlined. Okay, so that you're getting the now. I don't know why we're not taking the 6th year, but okay. Oh no, I do recall now. I do recall why. So and this is, and for some reason I sum them on the side here. I don't, again, I would do a better job of this at some point. Actually, I do know why, because you take that perpetual growth at the end of 22, you bring it back to the beginning of 22, which is the end of 21, and then you bring it back 5 years to T0. It's that deal. The 5 years, it's summed together for $19 what it should be, which is way far away from $148. Okay, by a lot. Also, what you can do, Sue says prices based on earnings. You could take that 20 times price per earnings and just start multiplying by all these earnings, right? And you can determine, say, hey, what should these look like? You're here, so this is equal 20. Right. So, well, that's what we think, and actually, that might actually work pretty well. So, and see, here's what you can do. So, for the end of 18, the end of 19, the end of 20. You can look at all of these based on the PE for the years. Now, this is 306. This is probably the most accurate version of this, right? For 306, what are we looking at here for 306? Summary. Let's go back to summary. 5 years. So in 21, this is in 21. Yeah. Well, it's somewhere in 22. In 21, did we have 306? Yeah, we did. Okay, we had that. So 255 in 2020. Yeah. So actually, the PE using the PE ratio based on the earnings, I've heard that's pretty good. That's a good predictor. Just doing so. What I do is I took a fixed ratio that I know the price per earnings are, and then multiplied by the earnings are what varies. I don't know what these are going to be. They've gone up every year here. Now, again, these are my projections, but also if I look at these for real, they were relatively close to this. Okay, so if you look at earnings per share on the Home Depot report, balance sheet is usually first. We're looking at 10, 12, 15. Yeah, funny enough, 10, 12, 15, about what those numbers are. Maybe 15 a year. This is 12, this is 14, this is 10, this is 12. But yeah, so this would be for fiscal 21 was 15. Yeah. Fiscal 20 was 12. Yeah. Wow. Pretty good. So our projections were looking back, are doing this little model compared to my big gigantic ones that take 2 weeks to do. Actually, this turned out to be pretty good. Maybe that's why these guys wrote the book. So anyhow, yeah. So looking at that, and also now when the discount rate is bigger than the growth rate, I think you can use the following formula here. You want see this that last one, that the 6th year, we took that price and say, okay, well that's or that $7.93, that cash flow, that dividend, and we said, okay, that's what the behavior is going to be ad infinitum, whatever, and you can define ad infinitum in the business world how you like. You subtract your discount rate from your growth rate that you've been using. And so in other words, if your discount rate is bigger than your growth rate for your sort of long-term projections here, you can use this this perpetual cash flow valuation to say, okay, well, the dividend at the end of year 6, at year 5, at the end of year 5, it's going to be equal to 793 divided by parenthesis R minus G, not the 20, but the 10, but the 7. That's how you get the 264. And then from there, you're going to go back one further and say, okay, we're going to bring this back 5 years here, and then that's our piece, 164. You can add that to the 19 here, and that's how you can get your combined numbers, or your combined valuation of the short term and the longer term version of this. Oops, this was not what I wanted to do. This, comma 19. Yeah, 183. Again, I showed you the graph, that bar graph. That's about what this was. This was just a very practical example of that. So you have 3 rates: G for the first couple of years, you have a discount rate, and then G the 6th year and beyond, and can be varied to yield different intrinsic values. And you can generate a lot of scenarios with a lot of different rates and see how that impacts your valuation. Okay, that's pretty much it with this. So it says if a company earns a constant return on equity and plows back at a constant proportion of earnings, and it grows at rate G. So yeah, that's this is the formula I was fumbling with before, so I apologize for that. So the value that really projecting dividends for a couple of years, and then say, okay, we'll have this dividend 22 to the future, which is a conservative, because these all change, right? So that's a conservative assumption. So, and then it'll give you the valuation for the first 5 years dividends and the perpetuity. Add those up, and you can compare the actual price, the market price, and what you have here. So not too far away from one another, close, but we've overvalued it a bit with our numbers, and the market's undervalued it relative to what we think. So, and also the value PE ratio is 306. It's 16% higher. The dividend discount model gave 264. Yeah. Versus the 306. So yeah. Looking at this, if you do the delta between this one and this, I guess it'd be 16% higher. Also use market to book ratio of 20 times, book value per share, to project and predict the stock price. So it's going through a bunch of different variations of this. So this is the market to book ratio times what we projected the book at, and then you get a version, and it's showing you the various ways you could value these organizations, these enterprises. Higher, is it 90% higher than dividend discount model? As G declines, business valuation declines, return on equity declines. So yeah, there's a lot of things going. Well, like I said, folks, hopefully we've given you some things to think about here. Okay, so you saw a practical example of this, and again, this was just an introduction. This was not if we did something like this, we'd have to do it, significantly more. I am gonna sort of force in this last piece here. This is valuing a business, and this is just very generic. This is not Home Depot, but this is just valuing a business using the discounted cash flows, and we'll sort of go through the math again on this. And now all the Standard & Poor's stuff, that'll be the fourth lecture, the fourth and final lecture. We'll get that in before Christmas, because I know there's people watching these. I know you guys are out there watching it, and you should watch this stuff, okay? Because it's really important. Free cash flow is the cash flow available for distribution to investors after the firm pays for investments or additions to working capital. Damo Darren at NYU. It's funny. I've been able to and now he started a decade before me, easily a decade before me. When he got to NYU from UCLA in the 80s. And he seems to just be discovering that he could teach accounting, that he could teach statistics, He seems to be just discovering that somehow. And I've been teaching a variety of courses from the calculuses and the physics at Rutgers to the corporate finance and the economics at St. Peter's and some of the accounting courses. So I've been in that game of varying what I've done because he's taught the same two courses for whatever that 40 is. That 40 years? I guess that's 40 years. Since Home Depot had a stock price, right? He's been teaching the same two courses, and you want to push your wings out a little bit. You need some statistics, you need some accounting, you need a bunch of different things to operate. See the graduate programs really. Now, again, they have a specific goal to really ram people through to some very specific and narrow areas where not that what I do is it's not what I do is not very broad, but I do have to have some, my macroeconomics hat, my valuation hat, my sort of accountant hat, my legal skill hat, kind of my legal skill set. So it's a lot of contracts. It's a lot of those kinds. So you have to have some sense of that. He was talking about free cash flows in one of his lectures, and he goes, it can mean anything. So I like folks really get a book written by 3 CPAs. The Wiley one is written by 3 CPAs. That's what your accounting reference should be, not the Breeley Myers book for accounting definitions at all. All due respect to those guys, but I would use an accounting book written by CPAs, and the Kimmel, Kiso, Wygand, that's been around for decades. It's really good, really good. So the valuation today always equals the future cash flows discounted at the opportunity cost of capital. The value of a business computed is the discounted value of free cash flows out to a valuation horizon plus forecasted value of a business at the horizon, also discounted back to the present. So these are the free cash flows, and again, the present value of whatever the ad infinitum version of this is what that is. And we looked at that. That was that sixth dividend. Brought it back to today, the perpetuity, and then discounted it back 5 years. So it's this. Yeah, this is the formula right there. The present value of the free cash flow, present value of the horizon value. Now, again, you may or may not, your time value of money skills may or may not be what you need them to be to do all this. Let me tell you, I could teach a corporate finance course and just spend this 15 weeks on the time value of money, and I would just cover that chapter. I think if I really teach you guys how to really legitimately do it. But again, it depends on the rate that people work and learn too. If we have a cost of capital 10%, we have a long-term growth rate of 6%. We're gonna work through this particular example here, and we'll try to make everything fit. We can see everything that we're doing. Okay. So you're claiming to have an asset growth rate of 12%. That's what you're claiming to have in the first year. And whatever, your asset value is 10 million and the growth rate is 10%. And then it changes a couple years out, it changes to 9 and to 6, and that stuff is somewhat arbitrary. So it's 9% in the 5th year. And then 6% in the 8th year. There we go. So you have the 10-year time horizon of what and again, you can just go back statistically and determine what those, and again, you always want to be conservative, not that it's going to grow to ridiculous numbers. Okay, and then what you'll do here is say equals that 10 million times 1 plus. See how we did this? So it's a little bit of a different style. We had a rate for every year instead of just referring it somewhere else. We had a rate for every year. Okay. Earnings are 120 is that per share? If it's per share. 1 million. It doesn't say per share, but those are 1 million. And now you have an earnings growth rate that's equal to that 12 and mirrors your earnings growth rate mirrors all of this. Okay, so now you have one for assets. Assets, obviously, it's a balance sheet quantity, and then you have the earnings growth rate. You have that. And return on equity, where does this come from? Oh, yeah, this is just earnings divided by, well, we're using assets. Really, again, it's an example. Obviously, it's just these numbers divided by asset value. And the earnings growth rate from 1 million to about 2 million. I wish the firm that we were going to acquire looked like this, but it does not. Okay, it does not. Okay, the net investment. Yeah, the net investment number, for whatever reason, just is this amalgam of variations. Some of them matched up, some of them were other numbers. And again, this is just what we found in our data. Okay. And return on equity. There's return on equity. Those are so mysteriously consistent the whole way. And now the drum roll for what free cash flow is. Okay. I see what they're doing. Folks, it's always techniques, right? You're always learning the techniques of what people do. You're subtracting capital investment from earnings. And that's, yeah, when you look at cash flows, that's what you're basically. Well, yeah, 122, 2 million, 3 million, 109 million. For whatever reason, I have this highlighted for some reason. Well, I'm sure as we're getting through this, we'll realize why that is. Okay, but yeah, I mean, this is pretty good in terms of just doing evaluation, just figuring some things out. Just as you're still twittering. I guess you the for whatever reason you're asked to analyze it at 7. Shares outstanding. There's a million. I always get a big kick out of these private companies that have shares. I always get a kick out of that. And this is a little blurb about repurchases and it says free cash flow is the cash the firm has available to distribute after paying for all investments necessary for its growth. Imagine you own all the shares in the firm. Free cash is what you receive as a single shareholder in the firm. Okay. Yeah, you can split that. You can split up the shares of this thing, and now we'll hit our analysis to get to this number. right? To get to that, to get to that number. But you're going to add up here. So what do we do? So with this 109, you're at the end of 7 with this. Right? You're at the end of year 7. So you're going to bring it back to the beginning of year 7. That free cash flow divided by okay. And then you bring that present value back to T0. So you're at the end of 7, or you're at the end of 6, and we're gonna go 6 years with this. So equals this divided by parenthesis 1 plus. And we'll let them consistent. So the cost of capital and then 6 years. So in other words, all the cash flows ad infinitum value today are $15, 15 15 are worth 15 million. Sure. And you don't have added, to infinity, you don't have, and if you just add these up, 1, 2, there's only 5 or 6 million there. So obviously you go a long way out. And again, but it's theory. It's you have to do something with the math to get to your valuation here. So yeah, so you brought the cash flows 7, 8, 9 up to infinity back to the end of 6, which is 27 million, and then you brought those back to the start of time period 1, which is 0 t equals 0 is the start of time period 1. That's 15 million, and then you have the other 6 cash flows, and I went bananas with the way I did it. So I said equal parenthesis this divided by parenthesis 1 plus, and this is 6 years. Yeah, that's 860,000. And then you sum these, about 16 million, and then you get the per share number. But it's 1 divided by, you're 16 million. But there you go. So you have a very generic valuation model that you have here. Price per earnings, net investment, equity and assets are used as the same number, which is kind of a mistake, but okay. But I see what they're trying to say here. I see what they're trying to say. So, but there you go. Okay, but yeah. So what you're doing is you're taking, the forecast of cash flows out to a very distant future, 100 years or something like that, bringing them back to today, or bringing them back to some 20 years, 10 years, and then the present value of that back to today. Let's say let's say from year 100 to year 10, you have all those perpetual cash flows brought back to the end of year 10, and then use use time value of money to bring it back to T0, and then you can the cash flows that you value, the more near term ones, you could value those. Okay, but there you go. We have a bunch of graphs to work on. That'll be another video. That's not going to be this. That'll be the 4th video, and we're going to look at Standard & Poor's 500, and we're going to look at the behavior of returns, and if returns today depended on returns yesterday. It sounds very simple, but where do we do it? Okay, we'll make a couple different graphs, and this will be again also a very good a very good example of something to work on here. So will prices follow random walk? And we'll draw some conclusions. Now, this is actual data of what the returns were, what a random walk is. Now, obviously, it's not. And also, we'll look at some of the definitions of variances. So we'll do a little bit of statistical stuff next time through. Okay.
We're back on the highway. Riders on the storm.
Folks, thank you.
Riders on the storm. Into this house we're